We'll get going with this session. You can already hear that I'm doing it in English. I can speak Swedish, so if anyone has a question, feel free to pose it in Swedish and I'll answer. But good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Before I do anything else, I have a question for you. What is the world's third largest economy behind the United States and China? Any guesses? It's cybercrime. $9.5 trillion annually. And I want you to let that number set in a little bit here. Bloomberg is telling us that the annual size of cybercrime, 90,000 billion Swedish kroner, and is growing. Some estimates put cybercrime to $20 trillion before the end of 2027. So I hope I have your attention. I'd like you to consider the following three questions today during this presentation. The first, how safe is your company from cybercrime? What are you doing to help protect your company? And should you be doing more? My name is Adam Woodworth. I'm the Technology Director for Visma Amili AB. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I've been working in finance and tech for the last 20 years, and I believe that through sharing my perspective on this subject, I can provide you with some actionable insights that you can take back home with you. Visma Amili provides accounts receivable management to the Swedish market. In other words, we're a complete invoice-to-cash solution with an advanced software platform behind us. We're nearing $500 million in revenue, and because we're handling payments of our customers, we're managing up to almost 4 billion kroner annually. So today's topic, cybersecurity is a financial risk. Well, cybersecurity is critical for us at Visma Amili. We're handling money, we're handling customers' data, we're a data processor for thousands of Swedish companies, and we're holding data for tens of thousands of Swedish consumers. And sometimes that data is sensitive. So we have an imperative to keep their data safe. My purpose today is to share an awareness, shape an awareness for you guys with cybersecurity, the risks that it can pose to you, give you a framework that you can use to assess and mitigate those risks, and list of actions you can take when you get back home. So before we begin, we need a definition. What is cybercrime? Well, I looked it up. I'm going to read this one so I get it right. Cybercrime is any illegal activity involving the use of a computer, network, or network device for the purpose of financial gain, disruption of services, or espionage. That's a broad definition, so I'll keep this presentation's focus to those kind of risks that provide or create the financial risk for companies. But let's look at the four most common types. The first is ransomware. That's where bad actors or hackers are holding systems or data hostage and demanding a payout. Obviously, there's the direct cost of the ransom, but there's also the cost of reputation if this information goes out into the media, let's say. There's phishing. That's where bad actors are tricking users into revealing sensitive information or passwords. This can give hackers access to systems, sensitive data, and depending on those intentions, can lead to a number of unwanted consequences. Intrusions, where hackers are gaining access to sensitive data and systems via attacks on networks or other cloud infrastructure. As with phishing, the consequences can vary immensely. And the last, denial of service or DOS attacks, where you overload, or not you, but where an attacker is overloading an IT system, disrupting services from normal operations. The disruption itself can be costly, but the side effects can also be. So the costs, we're here at the Economy och Företag Mässa, so I can't go farther without talking about the costs of cybersecurity and cybercrime. A little difficult to come by statistics, but I was able to find a survey of global companies having at least 1,000 employees. And according to the results of this survey, the average cost is 500,000 Swedish kronor, which is not massive, but it is significant. But wait, when a cyber attack leads to a data breach or a data leak, the costs go up 100-fold to 50 million Swedish kronor. I don't know about you, but that makes me concerned. In prepping for this, I looked at a number of cases that we've seen in the world in the last years, and we could spend more than a half an hour talking about instances of cybercrime. But there were two that I wanted to take up today. One was Santander from last year. I don't know if you read about this, but 30 million customers' data were found leaked on the dark web. Santander ended up paying $22 million in ransom to get it back, and they haven't really admitted the other consequences. And something a little bit closer to home, and I bet all of us in this room experienced the effects of back in 2021. And this one's interesting, and I don't know if everybody knows that when Coop's sub-supplier realized Russian hackers were trying to install ransomware, rather than be ransomed, they shut down their IT systems, which then led to a shutdown of stores for several days, which cost them hundreds of millions of Swedish kronor, and some estimate even up to 1 billion. So they weren't hacked, but yet they still incurred the costs. There were at least 33 cyber attacks in Sweden last year, of those we know about, but the actual number is almost guaranteed to be higher. Most companies don't want this information to go out into the market. It's actually much more common to hear about attacks that are attacking or impacting the public sector. And if you live in Sweden, like I do, and you listen to the news, then you've definitely heard about the Miljödata data leak. When we first heard about it in late August, it was communes and the public sector that was impacted. But since then, we know that 40 communes in Sweden, 14 other government agencies, and 25 very large, prominent public companies, for example, SAS, Skanska, Volvo, Biltin, Capio, were all impacted. And in this attack, we know that 1.5 million Swedes' information was leaked out to the dark web. And unfortunately, identities of protected people were also revealed, as well as other sensitive information. Right now, the Swedish Authority for Privacy Protection, or IMI, is deciding how to proceed with sanctions on these companies. But there's a big difference between the sanctions, or the maximum sanctions, on private versus public companies. If we look at a public institution, the maximum sanction from IMI, 10 million Swedish kronor, which is a lot. But for private institutions, private companies, the maximum sanction, 220 million Swedish kronor, or 4% of that company's global annual revenue, whichever is larger. So, with all that said, what are we to do about this risk? Well, what else can we do? We do our pragmatic best. We balance the risk of the potential costs with the cost and effectiveness of countermeasures. I mean, this is an economic forum here, so it's the same ROI calculation you do for any business case. And luckily for us, there's lots of things we can do to make it tough or tougher for bad actors to impact us. I'm going to tell a story. It's cliche, so I apologize in advance, but if you've heard it, just bear with me. Two men are walking in the forest. They come across a bear. The first man reaches down and tightens his shoelaces. The second man looks at him and says, "Are you crazy? You can't outrun the bear." The first man looks up and says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." What's the point? Don't be an easy target. At Visma Amili, we're doing our best to be a very hard target for potential bad actors. And we're doing that via Visma's security program. Visma Amili is a subsidiary of Visma. The foundation of this is, the outline of this program is a sophisticated and evolving set of tools and frameworks for assessing and improving both our assessing and improving our security performance. It's managed by security experts in Visma who increase the scope and the requirements of the program over time as the threat landscape changes. We're very fortunate to be a part of this program. It's something I don't think we lift on our own. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we're looking at these things in Visma. So the program is built on the four following pillars. The first is in-house software applications. For us, our state-of-the-art Amili platform is a critical aspect of our competitive advantage. and it has to be on the cutting edge of security. If your company doesn't have in-house solutions, this threat or vulnerability doesn't affect you. But the following three should impact all modern businesses. The next, your third-party solution providers, the ones you see out here, particularly those handling sensitive data, in other words, data processors. Your own, beyond your in-sourced or your outsourced software, you also have your own infrastructure. Your mobile devices, your computers, your networks, your domains, even your physical office is part of your infrastructure. And finally, your employers, your employees, who have their own individual knowledge, experience, baggage, maturity, habits, and processes that you need to be aware of. So taken together, that's the entire scope of the Visma security program, which I think of as a risk matrix. I don't have time today to go through all of these boxes in detail, but I will try to highlight some of the aspects of the program where I believe companies have the greatest risk. To be secure, a company needs to be in control of its own applications, its own infrastructure, its own people, but it also needs to be in control of its sub-suppliers' applications and infrastructure and people, and even their suppliers. Here, I think it's important to say that you're only as secure as or you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. So if you're doing world-class security on 3 out of 4 of these boxes, it's really not good enough. With a show of hands, I'm curious, we haven't deep dived yet, but in these 4 areas, applications, infrastructure, people, and third-party providers, where do you think you have the biggest vulnerabilities today? If I say applications, your in-house applications. Show of hands. Confident, I like it. Your infrastructure. Your third-party solution providers. Your people. Okay. Remember those answers because we're going to come back to it at the end of the presentation. Now, internal applications, I guess, I can't get too deep into it here. This slide or this section is more targeted towards an enterprise architect or a technical security advisor. But I do want to say, if you're not a tech company or your in-house application is not part of your competitive advantage, you might get better security ROI by going to a third-party provider who has tech as a core competence. You always have more control over your in-house software applications, but then you actually must invest the time and energy to keep them on the cutting edge. But we take the first aspect of applications. How are users accessing them? Are they using multi-factor or two-factor authentication or bank ID or something similar? In encryption, is your data transmitted and stored using modern and sophisticated techniques? How restricted is the access to your database? Are there backups with redundancy? How quickly can you respond to a data disaster? Is security built into the design and software development principles of your organization? Is your tech stack or the building blocks of your application is it built on the latest versions with no known vulnerabilities? And hosting. Are you hosting on-prem? Are you hosting in the cloud? Of course, cloud hosting is where most companies are going to, but it's not without its security risks or concerns. Moving on to the infrastructure, your computers, devices, network. It's all part of the relevant infrastructure when you're looking at things from a security perspective. Now, here are some things you could ask yourself or ask your IT manager when you get back to the office. Do you have control over your employees' devices? For example, do you have mobile device management installed on their telephones? Do you have endpoint or antivirus protection installed on their computers? Are you pushing out software updates? How frequently are you doing them? How many times can employees snooze before they're actually forced to install those updates? How secure is your network? And how are people connecting and working remotely? I'm working remotely today. I imagine we are all working remotely if we're working. Are you connecting to open up Wi-Fi, or are you connecting via tethered internet connection? I wrote this because I'm a tech director, but I do believe obtaining consistency in code is a little easier than obtaining it in people. As a tech director, I had to put it in. Here, consider yourself and your team. Is multi-factor authentication available and enforced on all the systems managing your financial data? Are you using a password manager and enforcing both unique and complex passwords? It's a finance conference. I'm sure folks are working with Excel. I work with Excel. When you send or store those files that contain personal information or sensitive information, are you password protecting them or encrypting them? Could anyone in your team with high-level access or permissions be the target of a potential blackmail or social engineering option? And can your employees or you spot phishing emails and know what to do when they come in your inbox? Are you offering security training to your employees? And how secure is your workplace actually? Do you have control of the visitors that come in? I saw a program on SVT. Is that coming up? Here it goes. A program called Hackad, 2 or 3 years ago. If you haven't seen this program, it was really, really impressive. 3 hackers get together. One poses as a utility worker, talks their way into a data IT consultancy to check moisture content in the room. And within an hour, she's placed a Raspberry Pi device into an Ethernet port. And within 2 days, 3 hackers have control of all of this company's data. It's a really good example where simple social engineering can defeat complex IT security. As I mentioned earlier, with your third-party providers, the threats or the same risk matrix that applies to you applies to them. As part of your supplier due diligence, a security assessment covering all aspects of this risk matrix is actually a best practice. And I know that people can be on different aspects of this journey, but if you haven't started this journey, I would suggest you start a dialogue with your local DPO, your data protection officer, and or your IT manager. And the first thing you can do is highlight your riskiest or your most important suppliers and actually start a dialogue with them. How are they ensuring the data security or the security of your data as suppliers? Other things to ask, and this is not a comprehensive list, by the way, but who, beyond you and your company, actually have access to your data? Where is your data stored? Of course, we need to be compliant. It needs to be in the EU, but is it in on-prem? Is it in the cloud? Not all cloud infrastructure is the same. Is it Google? Is it a third party? What encryption methods are used? Are critical user actions logged and traceable? So you have traceability. And very important, can this company that you're utilizing recover from disasters quickly if they're attacked or if the unthinkable happens? Okay. Now that we've reviewed these 4 areas in a little bit more detail, I'm curious, another show of hands, where do you think you have the biggest vulnerability today? Is it in your in-house applications? Your infrastructure? Your third-party providers? Or your people? Okay. Anybody change their mind? No. Well, if cybersecurity has not been a focus in your company, then the following checklist is something that I think you can utilize when you get back. The first, talk to your local DPO or IT manager about your company's strategy and approach toward ensuring data security with your third-party solution providers. It's very important you have control. If it's not in place, add IT and data security to your due diligence and audit processes. You don't have to do it for all suppliers, but certainly those that are handling financial data or critical data processes in your company. At a bare minimum, enforce multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication on all sensitive systems and any external financial applications. Require your team to use a password manager, like 1Password or similar, for storing complex and unique passwords for all application access. Network. Require your team to connect to a trusted and password-protected network at all times. For those working remotely, require a VPN or some sort of tethered mobile. Hackers love people that are using unsecured Wi-Fi. It's easy, it's tempting, but watch out, folks. Talk to your IT manager or your HR manager about establishing cybersecurity training awareness. These programs are really important, and start small, but don't stop. And finally, stay up to date on the latest trends. Even if cybersecurity or IT is not your core knowledge or core competence, stay up to date in the news, stay educated. So, speaking of keeping up to date, I'm a bit of a movie buff. I love movies, always loved the new releases and coming attractions, but I can say from a cybersecurity perspective, I'm not so excited about the latest trends because they're rather scary. The first is the increasingly sophisticated use of AI impersonation in text, in audio, in video. Hey, this is your CEO calling. I forgot my password. Can you help me out? This is happening today, folks, and we have to be very aware of keeping the safeguards we have in place, because they're very easy to bypass if we relax, let's say. The second trend, the evolving and increasingly sophisticated social engineering approaches that are being used right now to bypass established and advanced security. And the third, which I haven't heard so much about, but is definitely a trend, is quantum computing. Quantum computing is just around the corner, and it will render today's encryption techniques actually irrelevant. So there are bad actors and state-backed actors that are going out and finding data sources that are encrypted, storing them, knowing that in 5, 6, maybe 10 years, they're going to get access to all of that data. I'm not trying to scare you, of course, but stay aware. Before I leave, I want to leave you with these final thoughts. The first, be diligent. There are definitely bad actors out there that would love to get access to your systems, your data, your customers' data. Be pragmatic. Use ROI, return on investment, on the tools and approaches you're using towards cybersecurity. Evolve. The risks and the threat landscape are changing. You and your business need to as well. And the final piece, run faster than that other guy. Thank you very much.